انه ما بنقدر نستخدم نفس الامس او يعني اللينك اللي سويته جديد الحين برسل لكم لينك دراسي.
شباب بس في اقتراح عندي يعني سريع. إذا عندكم أي شيء مثلا كوميونيكيشن أو تردوها هذه في الواتساب سووا يعني خلال الثيم ايفنت عشان ما يطلع صوتنا يعني نسوي ميوت حق نفسنا وبس يكون أحمد والبرزنتر هم الموجودين يتكلموا.
اي احسن.
الدكتور يقول بتدخلوته ولا بعدين بعد شوي يعني؟
الحين بندخلهم بس خلال دقيقة، بس أرسل اللينك هذا.
إذا عندكم أي شيء مثلا كوميونيكيشن أو تردوها هذا في الواتساب سووا يعني خلال الثيم عشان ما يطلع صوتنا يعني سوي ميوت حق.
جميل. صوت مصطفى على اليوتيوب فنان.
يعني تو تدخل الدكتور مع البقية مع البارتيسبنتس ولا كيف؟
خلاص دخلهم لا جاهزين انتم.
دخلوهم
ما
الكل.
في باوربوينت باك جراوند؟
في
أحمد ما في
خلاص دخلوا الكل.
So you are already live لا؟
ايوه.
أسامة بس خليني كوهوست.
اوكي لحظة. تمام اللايف امورك تمام لا؟
السلام عليكم.
عليكم السلام.
عليكم السلام دكتور.
وين المشاركين؟ وين رسلوا لهم في هذا؟
ارسلت لهم بس.
ممتاز يزيد العدد. بس اسمح لنا دكتور خلال دقائق نبدا، بس ننتظر المشاركين يكتملوا
إن شاء الله. كيف الدراسة عن بعد؟
أنا جميلة صراحة، تجربة جديدة يعني.
والله احس يعني فيها جوانب ايجابيه مهمه،
بالضبط.
مثل طريق الجامعه نص ساعه ساعه في كل يوم.
بس البراكتيكال سايد واجد يروح منه، هذا الجانب السلبي، احس اكبر جانب سلبي يعني.
ايوه صح.
والدسكشنز اكثر يعني يصيروا اكثر في التوتوريالز.
ايوه صح بالضبط.
وشوفتكم بعد.
نشوف بعض على زوم.
So the interview is going to be Ahmed Hassan. Okay.
Yes. Yes, I'll be in the interview, doctor.
It's an interesting topic, artificial intelligence, especially in medicine. كثير من الناس are feeling threatened يعني, with the technology coming in. But also there are lots of other issues related to it that the ethics of AI is another big topic to talk about. And to students, I think one of the areas that you will sort of should think about is AI, especially the newer versions of AI, not the old detection of patterns, etc. The deep convoluted neural network, and they're not perfect. And we have a notion when we talk about computers that is sort of something we are used to, is that a calculator doesn't make a mistake. So when you have an AI that has the potential of doing a mistake like the human, because we're mimicking the intelligence or an activity that a human does that is not perfect. Nobody's perfect in this world. So we're mimicking something that is not perfect to begin with. So that means that however better the AI does it, there is still a chance, a probability that it can make a mistake. So always, when you put the analogy of the calculator, is that 1 + 1 is always equals to 2, can never equal to something else. So that's one of the reasons why there is resistance in adopting AI in medicine, is that, okay, so the AI did a mistake, who's to blame? Well, easy, you can say it's the programmer, but the programmer didn't teach the AI, right?
Yeah.
So it's the same. But you guys are students. If you guys do a mistake, do we blame the teacher?
No, no, I don't. It's a new topic and it has a new possibilities that we can like explore in the future that can help us a lot, actually.
Yes, true, but that's one of the contentious points, is that how do you consolidate that, or how do you come around that point? Obviously, you're not going to catch the teachers who taught the medical students and tell them this, you did a mistake. That's why we're taking you to court, not the student. Huh? The teacher. It'll be a nice.
Yeah, I was about to ask you, Doctor, about that. The mistake will not be from the artificial intelligence, from the programmer or thing, but you answered that before I asked.
Yes, so that's the question, is that the programmer basically created the algorithm. The AI learned through looking at images, learned to use that algorithm to its best knowledge. Just like how we teach you as students the basic information, then you guys go and read more around that topic and gain more information. We're not held responsible for what you guys do after. So how do you hold the programmer responsible for what he did? Yeah, so that's an interesting notion. Anyway, that's something to think about. But there are lots of issues with regards to ethics of AI, which we might not touch today. Just since we're waiting, I thought I'll just entertain you guys.
Yeah. All right.
Okay, Doctor, I think we're going to start the interview now. We have enough number of participants, 106 to be exact. Good morning, everyone. I welcome you to the first theme event of the online NGA. It will be an interview around the topic artificial intelligence and breast diagnosis. Today we have our special guest, Dr. Zahid Al-Mundri, who has been recently awarded, and we would like to heartily congratulate him on the award of the Global Summit for the Community of Information. Congratulations, Doctor. And we would like to ask you a few simple questions. First of all, where do you work and what is your specialty as? If you can introduce yourself to our audience.
So my name is Dr. Zahid Al-Mandari. I'm a radiation oncologist, and I work when I started the project. I was working in Royal Hospital. Currently, I've transferred to the Sultan Qaboos Comprehensive Cancer Care and Research Center. So I'm now based there. I treat mostly breast cancer, but also I treat genitourinary malignancies. These are the two areas that I focus my areas of treating.
All right, doctor. Can you please tell us what was the inspiration behind this huge project?
Well, as I said, I treat breast cancer, but you know that breast cancer is the most common malignancy in Oman, where 27.4% of all cancers in Oman are breast cancer. That's male and female malignancies. So it's a huge number. That's 261 out of 1,780 from the latest statistics from Ministry of Health. So, but also unfortunately, we tend to see these cancers at a later stage compared to the Western world. So if we compare ourselves, say, with, let's use UK as an example. If you look at the statistics of UK, and you can look this up, you'll find that we see 55% of the cases in stage 3 and stage 4. When in the UK, we only see about 17% of the cases. So what that means is that we need to improve early detection because that improves outcomes significantly. We've had studies before that have looked at how we treat breast cancer. Actually, 2 studies. Both were done by Prof. Mansour and his team in the university. One was done at an earlier stage, and one was published fairly recently. And we are not bad. We're on par with the treatment standards worldwide. But the issue is that we tend to see people who are in later stages. So if you compare stage 1 treatment with stage 1 treatment here with stage 1 treatments in the UK, we do the same, and so on. But we see more of stage 3 and stage 4, right? So the only way to do that is that we need to improve the early detection so that we can improve the outcome. And when we improve the outcome, we improve the cure rate. We actually decrease cost and so on. So it's sort of like a no-brainer that we need to focus on breast cancer. So that was the inspiration behind the breast cancer.
Okay, doctor. Before we continue on to the next questions, we would like to ask our audience if they have any questions and if they have any doubts, that they can please do it in the chat. And after the interview is over with our dear doctor, we will review the questions to him. Now, moving on. Doctor, can you please explain to our audience, especially those who are in the early years of medical education, what's the importance of mammography and why can it show different results as exposed to the breast diagnosis done by AI?
Okay, so you know that when you look at mammography, it's a test that is not perfect. And I go back to this perfection theory, is that nothing is perfect in this world. I always say this, that there is no perfect husband, there's no perfect wife, there's no perfect test. So all tests have their flaws. And mammography isn't a test without its flaws. And if you look at the reported sensitivity and specificity of digital mammography, the sensitivity is anywhere between 65 and 75%. While the specificity is 90 to 95. So what is sensitivity is probably a question that can be asked.
Yes,
well,
true.
Sensitivity is the ability of a test to correctly identify those diseases, meaning that you're trying to find the true positive rate of the disease. Whereas specificity is the ability of a test to correctly identify those without disease, so your true negative. So what, as you see, it's not perfect. And what you want is basically a higher sensitivity. So over the years, we found that when you add a second person who looks at a mammogram, that actually improves your sensitivity. So it goes up to around 85%. So that has become more or less the standard or the gold standard all over the world, that you need 2 radiologists to look at a mammogram. If they both agree, it goes it goes ahead. If they don't agree, then they meet and then they look at the disagreement, and then they come up with a consensus and so on. So when you increase your sensitivity, you're actually detecting the true positive cases more, meaning you're not missing cases, and that's important. So now when you look at what AI has done is that when it came, you see that AI isn't new in breast cancer. Actually, it's been there for decades. I think more than 40 years now. But the AI flavor or type of AI is the one that's evolved. Initially, what was being used was more looking at pattern detection, which is looking at things like looking for calcification and identifying those. So what has evolved now is what's known as deep convoluted neural networking. Here, the AI looks at the whole image and compares it with a database of images that it's learned over time. And through looking at the whole image, it comes up with, more or less can actually come up with a diagnosis of breast cancer. To this date, the AI hasn't been given the green light to give diagnoses. And the reason, again, is more of what I alluded to at the beginning about the calculator being yes or no accurate. And if it is wrong, who is going to check and so on. So it's not been given a green light to do it on its own. But the studies that came out, when we started doing this AI project in the beginning of 2019, at that time, the AI was seen to be as good as a radiologist. Within just 3 months, an updated study showed that no, it's actually with more learning and more cases the AI was exposed to, it's actually, it's actually better than a radiologist in looking at these images. And to sort of explain what, what the AI does and how it compares before, I like to use the analogy of a car, actually. So the old AI used to tell you that this is a wheel. Okay, the radiologist or the human would look at it and say, well, it's a circle. That's a wheel, correct? That's a wheel. Or no, this is just a constellation of items that have been put in a circle, and it looks like a wheel, but it's not a wheel. So that's basically what the previous AI used to do. Now, what the current AI does, it identifies that that's a wheel, and it's actually attached to this car. And that car is actually an Audi, and it's actually a 1992 model, A3, and so basically it can tell you based on the database that it has and the knowledge it has gained, it tells you to that detail. And however, a human is a buff with cars, he can never know all the models of all the cars that have ever been created. So you get to see why the AI sort of outperforms sometimes humans in areas that require obviously a lot of experience. One, two, the amount of knowledge that needs to be processed is massive, and that can be missed. So that's basically where you see the advantage of the AI compared to the human being.
Okay. Can you explain to us about the initial implementation of the project in Oman? Like, how did it start and when it did start, and why and how is your team set up actually? Who is the head and who runs the tests and etc.? Can you give us an idea of the project, especially in Oman?
Okay, so when we first started the project, we wanted to obviously, again, when you start something new, you always have a lot of resistance, and that's part of the challenge of introducing something new. And it's fun to push the boundaries and to bring new ideas into the government and to the institutions, wherever you're working. And part of that challenge of bringing something new is really what drives people to push the boundaries and innovate, rather than, you know, oh, they did it in somewhere else, let's copy them. So when we wanted to start this project, the whole idea was, okay, AI, how are we going to use it? No, we need more doctors, we need more machines. When you do this project, you're going to actually hamper our process of finding doctors. They might not give us the budget, you know, all sorts of negative ideas as to what can actually go wrong rather than what can actually go right. So it's a challenge to show people, okay, there are some things there are things that can go right if we actually go this approach. So we started it as a research project. There you overcome a lot of these questions in that, okay, it's just a research project, we're just testing it out. Let's see what comes out, what good comes out from this AI. So we started it off as a research project. And when we did that, we basically got a number of mammographies from Royal Hospital after we got obviously ethical approval, etc., the usual process. And we collected 151 mammograms, and they were the gold standard, meaning that when we said that that's normal, we know for sure it was normal because there were multiple mammographies before that that looked exactly the same as that. When it was a malignancy, there was a biopsy proven malignancy that was done after that image that showed that that was malignancy. If it was benign, there's biopsy, or it was multiple mammographies that showed that this particular lesion wasn't changing, wasn't becoming bigger, wasn't progressing. So it's probably a benign lesion. So we chose very carefully 151 mammograms, and we threw that to the mammogram, to the AI. And then within minutes, we got our results. And we compared our results actually with the international published papers to just see whether the numbers we had, although we had a statistician with us, Dr. Abdullah Al-Maneri was there, who helped us with the numbers of mammograms that we needed of each category for us to be successful. So when we did that, we wanted to confirm that we are on this right track. And if you want, I can actually share with you a couple of slides just to show you the results and how close we were, or how far we were from the results.
Yes, doctor, that would be amazing if you could.
So share. I can click on share screen, right? Yeah.
Yes.
So here you can see that these were our results. If you can see over here, what it's showing over here, maybe I'll just go back a couple of slides and show you what the AI does. So if you look at this picture here, you can see that in a mammogram you have, there's some diamonds, there is a circle, and there is a score of 10. And on the image, there's also another score that says 94 and 91. So the diamond is actually what the AI used to do before, just identifying calcification. The circle actually draws where a mass or a tumor is. This is something new with the new AI. And then the score of 1 to 10 is actually the probability of finding cancer in this particular image. And the 94% is actually can be translated to a BI-RADS score, which is, we use this type of scoring here from 0 to 20 is BI-RADS 1, 20 to 40 is BI-RADS 2, 40 to 60 is BI-RADS 3, and so on. So you basically, this is how the radiologist reports mammographies. They would say this is a BI-RAD of 2 or a BI-RADS of 5, or if it's a proven malignancy, BI-RADS of 6 actually. So 6 is biopsy proven. Obviously the AI is not doing biopsies, so there isn't a 6 over here. So this is what was published as the results previously, right? And so when we got our results, we were really surprised, obviously, that we weren't surprised. We were expecting that we should have similar results. And fair enough, we actually did get results that were similar to what was published internationally. So this gave us confidence that what we did was right. It also gave us confidence that the AI does work for mammographies or the equipment that we have. Obviously, you don't expect Omani women to be any different from women elsewhere, but just that it does work as a proof of concept. And then these are some of our own images, our own tests that we had. So this was probably obviously a malignant lesion. This was actually one of the areas that the AI missed. And here that's actually a cancer there that says 27. So, but when you look at that image also, it's sort of, you could say, you know, this image could have been done. It's not a perfect image. It could be improved on. That's why the AI missed it. And this is normal, and the AI also reported it as normal. So this is where sort of where we are, and this is an image that I use all the time. Is that it's sort of like a story in the internet where the AI, you know, I don't know if you saw this. Obviously, it's fake. It said the cockroach is in the X-ray tube versus the cockroach inside the human being. Honestly, there's no cockroach that size inside a human being. At the same time, even if it was in the X-ray tube, it wouldn't show. So it's just fake, just to clarify that. But again, just to tell you that AI, if this was shown to an AI, it wouldn't be able to differentiate. I mean, obviously, this is not true. As a human, you see this, you know, you dismiss it, and the AI won't be able to do that. So there are limitations to what the AI can do. So this is where we started, and the results were interesting. We had 96% accuracy, and obviously 151 mammograms were read in just minutes with the AI. So it just shows you the speed it can do it. So that was phase 1. And then came phase 2. Going from phase 1 to phase 2, we had to do a little bit more homework, getting to know how we are going to use the AI, who is going to use the AI, what would be the advantages of using the AI, and we needed to create what's known as a business case to sell it to the ministry and to get funding for the second phase. So when we did our homework, we made sure that however we introduce this AI, it should be intuitive. We shouldn't add extra steps to the way that the doctor uses their computer or their system to get to the data that's available to them, so that we have mass adoption. So adoption was very important, because the success of a project isn't, you know, oh, it's very good. Okay, now let's implement it in hospital X, Y, and Z and see what happens. And when you do that, a lot of times, if the people don't have your vision, are not driven like you in terms of what you have seen and what you have done with the AI, even if you give lectures and so on, you won't be able to achieve the change, or you won't be able to be successful in implementing a project. So you have to put yourself in the feet of the person who is going to be using the system. So what we did is we created something known as the spoken hub approach. So we took the AI centrally, and we implemented the AI in a central PACS where the images will be sent to the PACS. And then we send the images back to the hospitals that are connected to us as the spokes. And the initial phase was supposed to be 5 hospitals. And we chose 5 hospitals for a reason. So the first hospital was up north in Brahmi. Then we chose tertiary or quaternary hospital like Royal. We also looked at Khawla. We went down south to Salala. And we chose Fil Manatiq also Ibri as another location. Then the team went out to try and implement. So when we did the business case and we proved that AI would be useful based on the proof of concept, we got funding for it, alhamdulillah. I had to present this to 3 ministers. Minister of Health and other ministers were present. And the Minister of Finance at that time said, how much do you need? And I said, the amount, and which was it's not a huge amount actually. It was only 87,000 riyals to get it up and running. And he approved it and says, yeah, you go ahead. Especially when you look at the benefits of what the AI can do. So that's how we did it, and we implemented it in Royal and Khawla and Salalah. The other 2 hospitals, we had challenges. In Brahmi, they have a different type of mammogram that does analog images and then converts the analog images to digital, which the AI has not been trained on. So the vendor of the AI idea wasn't comfortable using the AI there. And then in Ibri, there was the radiologist who was there was taken out to training, which brings us to the important point, is that we don't have a lot of radiologists trained in mammography in Oman. So we needed something in Royal, we had only 1, for example, and I just told you require 2 radiologists to do this. So it was an easy sell, as what I'm trying to say, to get the AI up and running. So that's what we did. And the first 3 months, we went from the 150 cases, we did 733 cases in the first 3 months of implementation in those 3 hospitals. And and the AI got 692 of those cases correct. 10 were underestimation and 31 were overestimation. So we went and we looked at those cases of the 10 and the 31 to see where the AI went wrong. Most of the cases were post-op imaging. And I just mentioned to you that the AI was designed for screening, right? So obviously post-op is not part of the portfolio of what the AI would look at. So that's one of the areas that those 31 cases were. So if you actually take out the 31 cases, the accuracy is still very high. So without taking that 31 cases out, the accuracy was 94.5. So this is all the cases together. And sensitivity was 80%, and specificity was 95%. So so that's pretty good results, given that in literature you're trying to go more into the higher 80s for sensitivity. Now you have to put into consideration now a couple of things. One, when you use the AI now, you have an AI that's more or less an expert in reading mammograms, and you can use that with another human that is more or less learning or just graduated or is on the first steps of becoming an expert in AI, and you would get extremely better results in reading mammograms. So that's kind of what we wanted to do. And so the implementation was successful, and from this implementation, that's how the team and us won the award. So it wasn't just proof of concept and that was it. We went all the way through. We implemented it in 3 hospitals out of the intended 5. We actually got IBRA connected actually, so but we didn't go live with the imaging. And we're planning to expand further. So that's kind of in a nutshell what we did. The other reason we won the award was the way we did the approach, because, for example, Royal can say, oh, I like AI, I'll implement it. And that means that it's only implemented in Royal, right? When you go to Khawla as a patient, you wouldn't be able to you won't have access to the AI. Or if you go to Salalah, you won't have access to the AI. So we wanted the AI to be accessible to any institution that joins this hub and, wheel and hub and spoke sort of approach. So we can connect any additional hospitals to this AI and we'll be able to serve them also. The cost is actually less because the infrastructure that's required is already there. It's centrally located and so on. So that's basically the reasons behind us winning. So it's not just successful implementation, it's actually how we implemented, and how we were able to give the services from the north of the country to the south, to Salalah. So that's in a nutshell our project.
That's amazing, Doctor. I would like to give our audience a 1 minute break because I think we have reached the halfway of our session. I'll give them a 1 minute water break. They can go take a break and come back where we continue the rest of our questions. And I hope everyone will be back soon. So yeah, by 2:35 we will be back.
So I see there are some questions here in the chat.
Yes, I think some of our audience are already preparing the questions. I hope we can get more questions by the end of this session.
Inshallah.
Okay, I think our 1 minute break's over. I hope everyone is ready and rehydrated to continue with our session. Okay. We have talked about the advantages and we have seen how it can reduce the healthcare costs. But one thing we want to know is how can it be continued and how the spread of this project can take place over the upcoming years?
Okay, so when we worked on the project, sustainability is an important aspect of success of any project. You know that you having a nice project and it being successful in achieving one aspect of it, and then it fails or stops immediately after you go to the next project, isn't really a success of a project. So sustainability is very important. And so what has happened after we started the AI project is at that time Ministry of Technology and Communication, and the Ministry of Health and the Undersecretary of Planning at that time also was left us. So the ministry has left us, and the Undersecretary has also left us. But what they did is they created an AI implementation and oversight committee. So what is happening is that, just like how I shared with you the results after 3 months of what was the success of implementation, this committee actually looks at what else can be done for AI in the health field. It also looks at continuing reports from the current projects that are running. So how can we expand it further? What are the resources needed? What else can we do? So what we've been working on in that committee now is using AI for chest X-ray, for example. You know that anyone who comes into this country requires a chest X-ray.
Yes.
Well, at least for an expatriate. So there are millions of chest X-rays being done, and reporting those chest X-rays is very time-consuming and takes away a lot from the skills of the primary physicians who actually need to do other things apart from just looking at X-rays, whether it be in Oman or even outside of Oman. So if we can eliminate identify the normal chest X-rays, which is the vast majority of them, and highlight the abnormal ones, then the AI would basically cut the workload of physicians who are trying to look at this X-rays considerably. So this is sort of the things that the committee is looking at. We also touched on imaging in COVID, because you know that imaging can also diagnose. AI has also been used in diagnosing patients with COVID-19 using imaging. So we also touched on that with the committee and various other aspects. So that's basically one of the ways that we are maintaining sustainability is by, you know, we just don't, okay, next project, forget the previous project. No, previous project, how can we improve on it? How can we expand it? What can we do to add to it, and so on. So that's where we, that's what was adopted as sort of a joint understanding between various ministries, and it does take collaboration for us to be able to achieve our goals. I'll just give you an example of how the collaboration works between ministries, which is very important. The country has something called as an MPLS network, which is a closed loop network within the government. And that network in the hospitals and so on is used for certain items, and the speed of it isn't up to the standard and for using AI and so on. So part of the funding that we got was also to upgrade those networks and so on, and the Ministry of Technology and Commerce at the time were very helpful in upgrading the connections to gigabit bandwidth, which improved a lot of things, not just the AI, and improved communication between hospitals, connected the images from Khawla Hospital, for example, to Royal Hospital, where a doctor could actually look at the images of a patient that was scanned in Khawla on their computer in Royal, and other things. So we benefited hugely from this project, apart from just the AI of the breast. So some people have noticed that there was an upgrade in speed, but they don't know the reason behind it. But it is partly because of efforts that were done outside of their knowledge that's enabled those benefits. So sustainability, as I go back to sustainability, is very important. Another point of sustainability I mentioned previously, I touched on, is putting yourself in the shoes of the person who's going to use whatever you guys you're going to invent or use or develop in the future. That's very important. And we spent months before going live with the phase 2, was just to iron out how to make this AI fit within the workflow of the doctor. So no additional login, no additional screens. Basically, they see the same screen. Now there's a new column that says an AI score. When they click on it, they get the AI image. Basically, it's seamless. It's as if, you know, this was there yesterday and we turned it on today. And anybody who has used the Al-Shifa system would have been able to use it without any, with very minimal learning curve. It's just like, okay, now you have a new score. And if you click on it, you get the AI, you go to the AI. And with this score, what it means, so, you know, basically it guides them and helps them. And we've seen that reporting, for example, of normal mammograms has increased significantly, because the AI, when it makes mistakes, it's mostly mistakes of abnormalities. It's rarely, if ever, does a mistake on normal mammograms. So, and then that the doctors have noticed, and they've been, you know, when they see AI saying normal, they look at the image, it looks normal, it's probably normal. So they take 2 minutes to report the mammogram as normal. So, so that has been also the turnaround time and helping the physicians reach their improving their workflow. Is an important way for sustaining a project. So kind of that's how we maintain sustainability in the project.
Okay, Doctor. If any disadvantages are present in the project, what are they? And how can they be improved?
Yeah, well, as I said, nothing is perfect, yeah?
Yes.
And AI cannot replace the human being. So we still need the humans to be there to check and so on. And you also, there is a fear that people say that we are over dependent on AI. AI says it's normal, I'm not even going to look at the image. You know, those kind of things are the challenges that it's a tool. It needs to be used correctly. It needs to be, you know, it's basically a second colleague who's helping you reading the mammogram rather than replacing you. And when it comes to AI, there are biases. Not just I'm not talking about mammography, but you know, there are algorithms over there that favor race and color over other colors, and so these biases need to be identified, and someone who has programmed an AI might be biased already. They might not know that they're biased, and the algorithm that they create has a built-in bias that is perpetuated by the AI. So these are kind of the basic drawbacks of any AI that you need to understand. They are there, and you need to understand them, and also keep an eye out as to these biases, the presence of these biases. One other thing with regards to AI is that sometimes, you know, you understand the algorithm and you can adjust it and improve on it. But sometimes you create an algorithm and then the AI basically understands things differently. And what it understands changes the way you think, and you basically have an algorithm that you actually, as a human being, don't really know how the AI did it. And I'll give you a real example of that. The example is basically the ECG. I don't know if you guys have read about the ECG and AI, where an AI looking at ECGs highlighted a couple of ECGs saying, you know, these patients have a probability of dying. That's, you know, what percentage, I don't remember the exact number, but have a high percentage of dying within the next 3 months. And that same ECGs are shown to very well seasoned cardiologists, and they look at it and say, yeah, normal variation, absolutely normal ECG. So, more than one cardiologist called those ECGs absolutely normal. And the AI said, no, this patient have a risk of dying. And like, what are you seeing? You know, what is there in the ECG that's telling you that? And the thing is that when they did follow up those patients, the AI was right. So that's kind of where you're in a situation where you created an algorithm, and the algorithm is telling you something. What is telling you seems to be true, but you have no idea how you reached that conclusion. Obviously, there are some changes in that ECG that the AI saw and understands, and probably now the AI is going to teach humans that when you see these changes, actually it's significant. It's not a normal ECG. So just showing you where AI is going and what AI can do. So there are limitations, there are biases with AI, and another limitation of AI is that it's only mimics one aspect. I can't use obviously the AI that is programmed for mammographies to read X-rays. It's not the same. You know, it is highly trained to mimic one intelligent aspect of the human being. It can never mimic the whole human being. And we as human beings obviously use more than one aspect to look at. When we look at a mammogram, it's not just the image. We look at things like history, we look at the family history, we look at various aspects where we say, you know what, even though this looks normal, like a normal mammogram, I don't think so. I think I'm going to do a biopsy. That's not there in an AI, right? That's not there in an AI at all. That's important to know although the AI can process a lot of data very quickly and very fast, and that's where it wins, it does have its limitations.
Okay. For our audience, next, we have arranged a small poll that we will show you on the screen right now. It's about our topic, and the question is, in your opinion, if AI did a mistake, who will be blamed for that?
Yes, okay, let's see. Yes, so I think more or less it's the programmer is what's coming down to.
Yes.
So yeah, that's a very important question. So I'll just ask another question sort of to counter this. Using the same example we talked about. You talked about the ECG. So now the ECG is telling you that these patients are going to die, and the doctor is telling you, no, this is an absolutely normal ECG, right? So the AI is right, the doctor is wrong.
Yes.
Right? Who are you going to blame now? What are you going to do about the programmer? The programmer, you tell him, oh, you did a good program. He has no idea what the AI did, right? If he knew that these changes would cause, would lead to death, he would have been, the knowledge would have been perpetuated. The cardiologist would have known that these small changes that they see in the ECG are actually significant, but they didn't know, and the programmer doesn't know, right? So,
very true, actually.
So, is the programmer to be praised for the ECG identifying the AI identifying the ECG findings, or is it the AI to be praised? So I'm just flipping the question around. Yeah.
So I think the audience agreed on that. The programmer is the one who will be blamed from the AI mistake. I will move on to some few questions from the audience right now. I see a question. So do you think, doctor, one day AI can completely replace doctors when it comes to reading X-rays, especially?
If you ask me that question today, probably yes. But will it replace the job of a radiologist? No. Okay. So as I said, the AI will be very good at certain tasks, not all. And it will be a useful tool to have, but it will never replace the radiologist. That's where it.
Another question. Can AI also play a role in interventional radiology alongside diagnostic radiology?
Yes, I showed you the image of the cockroach and the X-ray.
Yes.
When you see that, you see it as a 2D image, right?
True.
The AI can actually look at an image and extract 3D information from it. So having said that, so that's kind of where, when we do intervention radiology, we're looking at fluoroscopy images during the intervention. Most of the time we're looking at digital images that are showing where the contrast is, where the catheter is, but it is not a 3D representation. With AI, you can convert those images in an instant, and it can guide you to, okay, maybe just twist your arm right, slightly to the right, you'll go into the capillary or the arterial axis that you want to reach. It's to your right, so it can be a useful guide, because it sees things, even if you're looking at 2D images, especially 2D images, it can really translate that into a 3D representation very quickly, more than what a human can do. So although I showed you that the AI might make a mistake on that, it will actually know that that's not, it's a superimposed image based on looking at images of the cockroach and the X-ray. So it will actually catch that one. That was sort of like a joke, but.
In the future, residents will be trained for using AI as an integral part of diagnosis. Do you think, doctor, that this will affect their ability to diagnose without AI, or it might affect their medical knowledge as they might work as machine operators mostly?
Yeah, I love this question. And the reason I love this question is that I can reflect back to the days when there was no calculator. Not having a calculator, does that make an engineer less effective?
No.
I mean, having a calculator now, does it make engineers less effective? Yeah.
I think so.
The calculator, obviously, long time ago, you were taught about how to do calculations. They used to beat you with in the good old days to do your multiplications and so on. And now there's a calculator. And if you know the formula, you know how to use it, you'll reach to a correct answer. So the same thing, AI is just going to be another tool that you will use, and it will help you to become a better doctor.
Can AI take part in organs transplantations? What they mean is to identify the, I think that's SLE, before the operation gets even started.
Good question. I wouldn't know the answer to it, tell you the truth, just off my head. That would need to be looked into. Probably I'll just leave it at that. I'm not going to go and try to. I wouldn't be able to answer that actually on my own.
Dr. Zahid, do you think that medical schools should integrate AI training, either programming or working with in the curriculum? I think this is for the future mostly.
Actually, the future is now. The reason I say that, you know that jobs are not like how they were before. Now, when you're applying for a job, they don't look at your certificate, but they look at your skill set. So a doctor who has a skill set that he knows how to program an AI and understands how an AI works is more valuable than a doctor who doesn't have that skill set. So it's not the future. I would say it is now, especially for you. For any doctor that's already employed, it's the future. But for any of you guys who are still students, it's now. It's not now is the future. So you need to build your skills in skill sets that are outside of medicine. If you want to be, you want to shine outside of your cohorts and become more employable, more wanted. So when it comes to AI programming and people creating algorithms, most of the time, someone who has the understanding of how to program the AI will not understand how to use the AI in medicine. The company that we use, Transpara, the AI from, the CEO, the programmer, and the person who actually worked on the AI, they're both radiologists. So just show the success of AI in radiography was they're both radiologists. So the CEO of the company, but he's a radiologist. So you can't sort of have a unique skill set of just programming AI and suddenly you're going to spit out wonderful programs left, right, and center. And the reason I'm telling you this is if you actually look at how Google and Amazon and all these companies are now recruiting, they're not recruiting data scientists. They're recruiting people who have a certain skill set, whether they'll be doctors with with some technological background to them, because it's easier to take a doctor and teach him data science than it is to take a data scientist and teach them to be a doctor.
I think that's excellent advice, Doctor, that we should actually work on it because we are part of the future right now. Finally, our last question from Abdullah Faris. Do you think AI could lead to less education to medical students where they become dependent on AI in diagnosing some cases?
It's an interesting thing. I'll tell you one thing. I've used pattern recognition AI when I was a student. That was a medical student. At that time, there were those Dells and these things. They were just out, the computers, and I was one of the. You can call me a geek at that time. And I had downloaded a program that would look at blood work, and you put in all the information about the patient as much as you can, and it would spit out a differential diagnosis. Okay, so that was I would say probably in the year 1999 or 2000, at that time, Prof. Mansour was in oncology. I was working as an SHO under him. So we had a young girl who came in, and I put in all this data inside, and I said, the computer says that this is metastatic colon cancer, and she had, even to me, it was very, very weird, the diagnosis that came out. Because she was in that age group that you would think that this is a hematological malignancy. She had very high, blood counts and so on. That basically this is just, it is one of the blood hematological malignancies. Prof. Mansour said, "Oqqas bala." So then, lo and behold, the histopathology staining came and said that the cytokeratin positive. Cytokeratin basically is a marker of non-hematological malignancy, meaning it is skin, either outside skin or inside skin, meaning your bowel also is a lining. So it's from the lining. And then it became interesting. And it said colon, like, come on, she's 9, I don't know how old she was. You can't have colon cancer. And then so we did upper GI scopy. It was negative. When they did a colonoscopy, a young girl who did a colonoscopy, and that came out to be positive. So it was interesting that pattern recognition AI was right. And I still don't know up till today what it saw in the blood work. There was no histopathology. Basically, all I put in was blood work and a bit of history. That was it. That's all I put in. And for some reason, the diagnosis was right. So just using AI wouldn't make you less educated. It just makes you cover your bases, I think, I'll give you another example that's more closer to my heart. Is one of my relatives was admitted in the hospital. Actually came to the accident and emergency with certain symptoms. To me, as an oncologist, when I heard those symptoms, I knew that probably this is differential diagnosis 1, 2, or 3. One of them being cancer. I put diagnosis 1 as cancer. The A&E physician thinks differently. They use a triage type of an approach to thinking, which is it's not that it's wrong. It's just the way that it's the worst place to go when you want to be diagnosed is to the accident and emergency, because they're not there to diagnose. They're there to help you overcome a critical condition, and then you go on. But that's how you're trained, and they see it, and they did not reach a differential diagnosis that said to them that was cancer, and they discharged. Obviously, at the end of the day, it did turn out to be cancer for my relative. And I just think that things like AI would have caught and highlighted, you know, differential diagnosis number 1, malignancy. Okay, maybe I need to refer to endocrine, you know, to an oncologist. But it's not that, you know, as I said, the accident emergency physician is wrong. This is how they are trained, and this is how they work, and this is how they think. You can't be thinking of someone who comes with an accident with a broken leg and so on, and has pain in the thumb, or has a mole. You say, okay, that could be skin cancer. It doesn't even cross your mind. You know, you have other priorities at that time, and that's basically what they do and how they think. And none of us as doctors will be fully equipped with all the skills that's necessary to diagnose everything. You're going to be good at one aspect, but not all the aspects at once. So if you're an endocrinologist, you're going to be very good at that. If you're a cardiologist, you're going to be very good at that. But when something comes outside of that realm, you might actually miss it. And that can happen. A patient coming with cancer, with chest pain, and seen by, I just flipped it now, seen by us oncologists, and you're saying, oh, this could be that, could be this, it could be just some, and it actually turns out to be an MI, you understand? And yes, he has cancer, but he has an MI. So just to keep that in mind. So I think AI will help people be more inclusive and reach diagnosis, and make us better doctors.
Okay, doctor, I think we have actually crossed our time limit. It's 3:05 now. If in under 1 minute, you can have one final advice to us as medical students, and especially in this harsh condition that we're placed in, you have the mic.
Yeah, I go back to develop skills, really, the develop skills, learn programming. And I tell that to my son also. He's a geologist and learning, is in year 3 geology. And this day and age, it's not about your certificate. It's about your skill set. And if you want to be employable, want to be differentiated from your colleagues, it's not just a matter of getting distinction in medicine. Do more than that. Learn, you know, Python, get projects here and there, think outside of the box, and always challenge the norms. Don't always follow the norms. It's important for us to change. We've been doing things in the Ministry of Health and otherwise for years the same way. That doesn't mean that there's no different way that could be better. So keep your eyes open to what's available, and keep your minds open to trying new challenges. That's my advice.
Okay, doctor, we will hardly thank you for your presence today. It was very meaningful to all of us. Especially, I think most of us, this is our first experience with AI in such a deep field as radiology. And we will, again, thank you so much for your presence, and we will hope that you can join us in future. Inshallah, it will be in face-to-face, not online. And I would like to thank all my audience today. And if you have any final words, you can write them in the chat, and we will hand them over to the doctor. Thank you, everyone.